Welcome to the Cambridge Financial Podcast with Bert Salazar, CEO at Cambridge Financial Partners, LLC. This podcast is all about tax-preferred retirement planning, economics, financial risk management, and achieving a risk-free and successful financial life. Now, your host, Bert Salazar. Bert Salazar. Bert Salazar.
Hey, good day everyone. Welcome to the Bert Salazar Retirement Show. My name is Bert Salazar and I'm going to be your host. I am excited to be here once again. I took 3 weeks off, not only to kind of put together new material for all of you, but also, summertime is a time for me to do a lot of reviews with my clients. And I'm going to share with you the type of reviews that I do with them. And I'll also share some of the discussions that we had and their feeling as to, what's going on in today's economy in the United States and what the foreseeable future may bring to them as people that are either close to retirement or are already in retirement. So this is episode 179. So we've been doing this for quite some time, and thank you all once again for giving me an opportunity to get in front of you on a weekly basis. And the title to this episode is The Benefits of a Tactical Retirement Blueprint, which is something that myself and my firm specialize in doing with all of our clients from a business standpoint. So, like I said, I took 3 weeks to dedicate to my clients. I believe I conducted a total of 28 TRB reviews with clients in a 3-week period. Now I do have many more clients, so I do a lot of them throughout the year. Usually I do anywhere between 5 and 6 reviews on a monthly basis, sometimes 8. But I try not to do any reviews in December or January, and then I take the month of July where I don't do any reviews. But then I do a lot of reviews like in the month of August, which is where we're at today. And then obviously I'm able to, depending on the clients and what they do, and depending on the complexity of their products and services that they have with me, then we do reviews sometimes multiple times a year. For my top clients, I do reviews 3 times a year. So pretty much every 4 months, we're doing a tactical retirement blueprint update, which is something that they appreciate, especially my business owners, clients that are always changing and dealing with, challenges and opportunities in the marketplace. So I did a podcast probably about a year ago, perhaps even a little bit longer, in which I talked about our tactical retirement blueprint, and I'm not going to go into a tremendous detail on the tactical retirement blueprint, although I'll start doing that moving forward now, because very few of you are going to go back, a year and a half ago looking for a tactical retirement blueprint podcast. But what I'd like to do today is basically share with you what it is that I try to accomplish with my clients on an annual basis when they start following the recommendations that my firm and I make when it comes to their retirement planning and their retirement distribution planning. And the Tactical Retirement Blueprint, and for short, I call it the TRB, assesses your finances through a telescope as opposed to a microscope. And that's extremely important, because what you'll find is, for those of you, and I would argue that most of you have been dealing with financial advisors throughout your professional careers, most of you have been dealing with financial advisors that when they visit with you, they're going to take a look at everything that you've done. They're going to look at your financial statements, and they're going to try to assess whether the financial statement that you possess is a good product or not, and then they're going to make recommendations along those lines. Now, they're going to be looking at each and every one of those assets that you provided to them for review, and then they're going to, again, make a recommendation whether that's a suitable asset to keep in your portfolio or is that an asset that should be replaced by something that they feel is better? Now, although in my practice, I take a look at each and every one of those products that our clients own, and then I do an internal audit of those products to gauge performance and so forth, I pay more attention to the whole. I pay more attention to the fact that, if you're able to look at your finances through a telescope as opposed to a microscope, you're going to be exposed to a number of things that you had never thought about before, or you had never thought about before. Most important, when you look at your finances through a telescope, you're going to realize that some of the products that you have in your portfolio are actually hindering the performance of many of the other investments that you have in that same portfolio. So now the only way you were able to see that, or you were able to address that, would have been by looking at your finances through a telescope, because a telescope allows you to take a look at the performance of your assets on one side of the ledger individually, and then on the other side of the ledger congruently against one another. And if the performance is apropos, then obviously you maintain that product in your retirement product line, and then you'll keep it at least for another year until you do the next TRB for the existing products that you already have. Now, one of the great benefits of the TRB and the fact that we look at your finances not only through a microscope but also telescope is that it addresses current retirement risks that you have within your existing portfolio. So taxes, inflation, asset volatility, whether we're talking about interest rate volatility or stock market volatility, propensity to consume current assets. What's your current standard of living? What's that standard of living? Is that the standard of living that you're going to be maintaining throughout the three phases of retirement, the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years? And longevity planning. Are your assets going to be able to stay with you until the day that you die? Because if getting old is bad, getting old and having no money is worse. And what's interesting is whenever I engage a new client, and I take a look at everything that they've done, and I conduct their first TRB planning meeting, we realize that the majority of the clients that I dealt with in the past are going to run out of money before they run out of life. So although some of you I have not met yet, I would argue that for the vast majority of you, you are going to run out of money before you run out of life. And that's going to be sad, because now your retirement life, especially when you get into the slow-go years and the no-go years of life, are going to be totally different than the very beginning of your retirement life, which was the go-go years of life. Now, as I said earlier, I conducted 28 reviews in a 3-week period with clients, and wow, what can I tell you? What a difference a year makes. And the reason why I say why a difference a year makes is that, like I said, I conduct these reviews on an annual basis. And even during the years of the pandemic, 2021, we're kind of coming out of it, at least the worst part of it. But I conducted TRBs in 2019, 2020, and 2021 as well. And although we were going through a pandemic, and many of my clients were not working, they were sitting at home, my business clients had their businesses shut down throughout the United States, and they were not generating any revenues. They did not feel as bad about the future as they feel today. And that's a fact. And it's really sad, because we're going through really, really hard times in the United States. Take a look at what has happened in 2022 with inflation. It's now what, 8.5%, which is, that's a misnomer. That's not a real number. Inflation is much, much higher in the United States, because when you take a look at the inflationary cost of essential products and services that we purchase every day, like gas or fuel or food, energy, healthcare, those prices have gone through the roof, and the increase is much, much higher than 8.5% to 9%. Now, the government comes out with the 8.5% or 9% for last month based on the fact of all the products and services that are sold in the United States. But when you reduce those products and services to the essentials, which is what we Americans use every day, then obviously the inflation rate is much higher than the numbers that the government are giving us. So a year makes a big difference. Inflation is very high. No one knows what's going to happen. They're about to pass another stimulus, or they call it the Inflation Reduction Act. And whenever you hear the government telling you or giving you a name for a passage of some economic stimulus, that they call it like an Inflation Reduction Act, the least it's going to do is reduce inflation. As a matter of fact, the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, which is a nonpartisan governmental office that all they do is look at the numbers, just came out and said that the Inflation Reduction Act is not going to reduce inflation at all. As a matter of fact, more than likely it's going to increase it even higher, because we're printing more and more money and putting that money into the economy. And as I always say, inflation is nothing more, nothing less than too much money chasing too few goods. So inflation is high. The stock market volatility has gone through the roof in 2022. It's hard to determine what's going to happen in the future. I know that the government is now, the Treasury is now raising interest rates in order to kind of slow down inflation a little bit, perhaps a little bit too little, too late. So Americans are dealing with high inflation. They're dealing with now higher taxes, because this new Inflation Reduction Act is also going to be increasing taxes. And by the way, just for those of you that may not know this, corporations don't pay taxes, people do. So the corporations are going to, if they have to pay more in taxes, all they're going to do is they're going to pass that tax liability to the consumers, which at the end of the day happens to be us. In the new proposal, there are going to be 87,000 new IRS agents. Do we really need 87,000 new IRS agents? Why do you think that is? They're going to be auditing, and they're going to be coming after each and every American as much as they can in order to get more and more money in order to cover all of those expenses that they want to cover from a governmental standpoint. Now, why didn't we take 87,000 agents and put them, instead of being IRS agents, why didn't we deputize them and make them school agents, and have 87,000 agents throughout the United States, work in public schools and private schools, protecting our children from crazy people that want to come in and kill them. So we can have an argument about this, but it is what it is at this point. So in reviewing and conducting these TRB reviews with my clients, I'll tell you, their retirement fears have increased dramatically. But on the good side, their economic blueprint allows them to sleep well at night. So although they were concerned about taxes, inflation, stock market volatility, propensity to consume to some extent, most of the clients that I deal with, I have already taken care of their longevity planning issues, so they don't have a concern with that. But although their fears when it came to all these things that I just talked about were there, and were much, much higher than in 2021 and 2020 and 2019, The economic blueprint that I put together for them allows them to sleep well at night because they realize that regardless of what happens in the future, their retirement income is going to be protected for life. And if you are in retirement, believe me, if you're not in retirement, you may not believe me at this point, but once you get to retirement, you're going to be believing, or you're going to be becoming a believer in what I'm about to tell you, which I have told you many times before. When you're in retirement, guaranteed income is the most important asset that you could have in your retirement life. So if I were to ask you on a scale of 0 to 100, what percentage of your retirement income in retirement would you like to have guaranteed? If the answer is less than 100, you're probably a financial imbecile. And you need to kind of take a look at your financial life all over again. So at the end of the day, if your retirement life is protected and your retirement income is secured, then all you really have to worry about is, number one, be able to wake up on the green side of the grass every day. And number two, enjoy your life and your family and travel, because tomorrow is promised to no one. Now, as I was covering the retirement blueprint with my clients in relation to the products that they had with me and what the economy was doing, I also wanted to remind them of what I call the rule of 72. And I have used the rule of 72 for many, many years to kind of educate my clients as to how many years will it take for your assets at a given interest rate to double. And that's something that most clients, especially when they're pre-retirees, they look forward to knowing, because they want to know in 10 years from now what would be the value of their assets today at a current interest rate. So I'll give you an example. If we apply the rule of 72 to retirement assets, let's say that you're receiving a 10% rate of return on an annual basis on your investments. So you take 72 divided by 10, and the answer is 7.2. That means that if you get a 10% of your investment returns every single year, in 7.2 years, your current assets are going to double in value. And that's important to know. By the way, if you use the rule of 115, which we're not going to discuss today, the rule of 115 will tell you how many years will it take for your assets to triple in value. So most of my clients, because they have been dealing with me for many years, most of my clients have a pretty clear understanding of the rule of 72 when it comes to having conversations with me from a business perspective. Now, I also use something, and this is something I use for the first time with my clients because of where inflation is in the United States today. Because as you very well know, it's at a 40-year high. We have not had this high inflation rate in the U.S. for at least 40 years. I remember when I was growing up back in the 70s, we had pretty high inflation rates. So if you go back to the 70s to now, this is very, very high as it is. Now, the rule of 72, I apply it different when it comes to inflation. I use what I call the inverse rule of 72. So for instance, if inflation, let's say, is at 9% today. If you take 72 divided by 9, equals 8 years. So what that means is that whatever current assets you have today, and whatever purchasing power you can get out of those assets today, in 8 years from now, at a 9% interest rate, your purchasing power will be cut in half. So what does that mean? Well, what happens if you happen to be receiving Social Security benefits? If this inflation continues at this rate, if you're generating $40,000 of Social Security benefits on an annual basis, and I'm not going to factor taxes onto that, because most of you are going to be paying taxes on your Social Security benefits, and I've done many podcasts along those lines. If you do it the right way, then you won't. But for most of you, you will. That means that if you're earning $40,000 in Social Security benefits, in 8 years from now, at a 9% inflation rate, you're only going to be able to purchase $20,000 worth of goods and services. So you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to generate more income, or you're going to have to take a lot more risk in your retirement assets, especially at a point in time where you don't want to take risk and you can't afford to take risk because it would be impossible to recover from a market crash on your retirement assets, or you're going to have to become a Walmart greeter in order to earn some additional income to offset that differential in the inflation rate that we're currently having in the United States. So if you don't think inflation is important, think again, because inflation is a silent killer. Inflation is a silent tax that the government, by choice, many a times, places on Americans in order to keep them at slavery rates from a political standpoint. Over the next 2 podcasts, I'm going to be addressing not only the benefits of a tactical retirement blueprint, but I'm also going to be addressing specific retirement products that I recommend as part of a successful tactical retirement blueprint, or TRB, which for the vast majority of my clients that I've done these reviews for, it included annuities and life insurance, fixed annuities, index annuities, and life insurance. Now you may say, well, Bert, I know you've talked about these things in the past, but do you think that's really going to take care of my problems? Well, it may not take care of 100% of your problems, but it's going to take care of the vast majority of the problems when it comes to taxes, inflation, asset volatility, propensity to consume challenges, and longevity planning for you and for your family. So I'm back. And I'm glad to be back. I kind of missed you all for a while, but, duty calls, and I had to dedicate a lot of time. And not only that, when I visit with a client to do a tactical retirement blueprint, I kind of pull their statements, their updated statements, and I review everything, and I plug in all my numbers in my TRB software. So I have to prepare prior to each and every one of those meetings. And for certain clients, it may take a whole day for me to prepare for an hour meeting and so forth. So I apologize for kind of bypassing you for the last 3 weeks, but by the same token, I have a bunch of new topics that I'm going to be bringing to the forefront that will always apply to the environment that we're living in today. So I'm not going to take any more of your time. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to call me. You can actually call me at area code 786-766-1042. You can also send me an email at Bert, B-E-R-T, at bertsalazar.com, BERTSALAZAR.com. And always remember that my goal for you and your family is to kind of help you change the way you see things, because when you change the way that you see things, the things that you see change. So once again, thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.